"You are not welcome here!" The woman's scream hit me like a slap across the face. I stood in my own driveway, keys in hand, my 7-year-old son Jasper gripping my arm. The Homeowners Association president blocked our path, 2 SUVs flanking her like a wall. Red and blue lights were already cutting through the twilight behind her. She'd called the cops. On me. For trying to enter the house I'd bought 3 weeks ago with 8 years of savings. My son's hand tightened around mine. I could feel him shaking. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. What happened next changed everything. Let me back up. 3 hours earlier, everything felt right. I was driving my old Honda Civic through the entrance of Pinecrest Meadows, the neighborhood I'd dreamed about for years. Oak trees lined both sides of the street, their branches forming a canopy overhead. The late afternoon sun filtered through the leaves in golden streams. Fresh-cut grass. The sound of a distant lawnmower. A mockingbird sang from somewhere in the branches. Jasper sat in the back seat working on a drawing of our new house with his crayons. "Dad, do you think we can paint my room blue?" he asked. "Whatever color you want, buddy," I said. My chest felt light for the first time in months. After 8 years of saving every extra dollar from freelance photography gigs, working weekends on documentary projects, I'd finally closed on the house. 47 Maple Drive. Hours. But when I turned onto Maple Drive, something was wrong. A steel barricade stretched across the driveway. 2 black SUVs were parked at angles blocking any path forward. A man in a gray suit stood near the gate, arms crossed. He was in his 40s, sharp-featured with the kind of stance that said he was used to giving orders. I slowed the car and rolled down my window. "Excuse me, I'm the owner of 47, I said, keeping my voice calm. The man didn't move. "Mr. Callahan?" he asked. "Yes." "Wait here," he said flatly. Before I could respond, the woman stepped out from behind one of the SUVs, sharp suit, cold smile, and the real confrontation began. Jasper leaned forward from the back seat. "Dad, what's happening?" I could hear the fear creeping into his voice. I glanced at Rowan, then at the barricade. My pulse started to climb. "Look, I don't know what this is about, but I have every legal right to be here. This is my property." That's when she appeared. A woman stepped out from the shadow of one of the SUVs. She was in her early 50s, dressed in a cream blazer and dark slacks. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun. Everything about her screamed control. She walked slowly, deliberately, until she was standing right next to Rowan. Her smile was cold. "Welcome to Pinecrest Meadows, Mr. Callahan," she said. "I'm Margot Sinclair, HOA president." I nodded, trying to keep my composure. "Ms. Sinclair, there seems to be some confusion. I'm the owner of this property." She tilted her head slightly. "We don't dispute your ownership, but ownership doesn't exempt you from community standards. You've violated multiple regulations." I felt my jaw tighten. "What regulations? I haven't even been here." Margot reached into a leather portfolio and pulled out a thick stack of papers, laser printed, no signatures, no official stamps, just paragraphs of dense legal jargon. "These are the HOA emergency resolutions," she said, "approved by the board. You're in violation of codes 17, 23, and 41. I scanned the pages. It was gibberish. References to property modifications I'd never made, complaints about disturbances I'd never caused. None of it made sense. "This is insane," I said. "I want to speak to the full board. I want a hearing." Margot's smile widened just a fraction. "I am the board, Mr. Callahan. I've served as president for 6 years. If I say you're not welcome, you're not welcome." The air felt thicker. Jasper was silent in the back seat now, watching everything. I could see his small hands gripping the seat in front of him. "I'm not leaving," I said. "This is my house. I have every right to be here." Margot pulled out her phone. "Then I'll need to call the authorities. You're trespassing on HOA-managed property." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "You can't be serious." She was already dialing. I sat there frozen as she spoke calmly into the phone. "Yes, this is Margot Sinclair, president of Pinecrest Meadows HOA. I'm reporting an unlawful entry attempt at 47 Maple Drive. The individual is refusing to leave." She gave my name, my license plate. She described me like I was some kind of threat. When she hung up, she looked at me with that same cold smile. "The police will be here shortly. If you're still here when they arrive, you will be charged with trespassing." I wanted to scream. I wanted to get out of the car and demand answers. But Jasper was right behind me. I couldn't let him see me lose control. "This isn't over," I said quietly. Margot leaned down slightly so her face was level with my window. "Oh, Mr. Callahan," she said softly. "It hasn't even started." Red and blue lights appeared at the far end of the street. The sound of the siren grew louder. Jasper whispered from the back seat, "Dad." I looked at him in the rearview mirror. His eyes were wide, scared. I reached back and squeezed his hand. "It's okay, buddy," I said. "We're going to fix this." But as the police car pulled up behind us and Margot Sinclair stood there with her arms crossed and that smug expression on her face, I knew one thing for certain. This woman had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She picked the wrong person to push. The patrol car stopped 10 feet behind my Civic. 2 officers stepped out. The first was a man in his 40s, broad-shouldered, with the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen plenty. His nameplate read Brennan. The second was younger, a woman in her late 20s, sharp eyes scanning the scene. Officer Quinn. Brennan approached slowly, one hand resting casually near his belt. "Evening, folks," he said. "We got a call about a trespassing issue. What's going on here?" Margot stepped forward immediately, her voice smooth and professional. "Officer Brennan, thank you for coming. I'm Margot Sinclair, president of the Pinecrest Meadows Homeowners Association. This man is attempting to access a property that's been suspended by HOA emergency resolution. He's refusing to leave." Brennan glanced at me, then back at Margot. "And you are?" he asked, looking at me. "Emmett Callahan," I said. "I'm the legal owner of 47 Maple Drive. I bought this house 3 weeks ago." I held up the deed. Brennan took it, his eyes moving over the text. He checked at the signatures, looked at the property address, then handed it back. "This looks legitimate," he said. Margot didn't miss a beat. She opened her leather portfolio and pulled out that thick stack of papers. "Officer, the HOA has the legal authority to suspend residency rights under emergency circumstances. These are the board resolutions properly filed and notarized. Mr. Callahan is in violation of multiple community codes." Brennan took the papers and flipped through them. The seconds stretched out. Finally, he looked up. "Ma'am, these resolutions look official, but I'm not a lawyer. This is a civil dispute. I can't enforce HOA rules." Margot's jaw tightened just slightly. "Officer, he's trespassing on property managed by the HOA. That's a criminal matter." Brennan shook his head. "He owns the house. The deed is valid. If there's a dispute about HOA authority, you'll need to take it to court." Relief flooded through me. Finally, someone with sense. But Margot wasn't done. "Officer Brennan, I appreciate your position, but I need this man removed from the premises. He's creating a disturbance." Brennan looked at me. I was sitting in my car with my son. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't made a single threat. "Sir," Brennan said, turning to me, "I understand your frustration, but if there's a legal dispute with the HOA, you're going to need a lawyer. I can't force you to leave, but I also can't force them to let you in. This is civil territory." My stomach dropped. "So, what am I supposed to do?" Brennan's expression softened. "Get a lawyer, file a complaint, work it through the system. That's how this gets resolved." I looked past him at Margot. She was smiling again. That same cold, controlled smile. Brennan turned back to her. "Ma'am, if he's not creating a disturbance, I can't remove him. But I'd suggest both parties find legal representation and settle this properly." Margot nodded slowly. "Of course, officer. Thank you for your time." Brennan hesitated, then leaned closer to me, lowering his voice. "Listen," he said quietly. "Be careful with this woman. I've seen her pull this kind of thing before. Document everything. Get a good lawyer. Don't try to handle it yourself." I nodded. "Thank you." Brennan and Quinn got back in their car and drove off. The street fell silent again. Margot stood there, arms crossed, that smug look still plastered on her face. "Well, Mr. Callahan," she said, "it seems we're at an impasse, but let me be clear. You're not getting into this house tonight, or any night until the HOA clears you, and that's not going to happen." I started the engine. Jasper was trembling beside me. I couldn't put him through this anymore. "We'll see about that," I said. Margot leaned down one more time. "Enjoy your hotel stay," she said. Then she turned and walked back to her SUV. Rowan followed. The 2 vehicles pulled away, leaving the barricade in place. I drove to the nearest motel, the Sunset Inn, peeling paint on the exterior, a neon sign flickering in the twilight. The room smelled like mildew and old carpet. 1 queen bed, a television bolted to the wall, A bathroom with a dripping faucet. Jasper sat on the edge of the bed, his backpack clutched in his lap. "Dad," he said, "why can't we go home?" I knelt down in front of him, trying to keep my voice steady. "Some people are being unfair right now, buddy, but I'll find a way." His eyes filled with tears. "But it's our house. You said it was ours." I pulled him into a hug. "It is, buddy. We'll figure this out." When Jasper finally drifted off, I stared at the ceiling, too angry to sleep. The words, "We'll figure this out," echoed in my head, a promise I wasn't sure how to keep yet. Emergency resolutions, legal precedent. The more I read, the clearer it became. HOAs had authority to enforce rules, but only through strict procedures, public notice, proper hearings, due process. Margot had bypassed everything. Around 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Check the Pinecrest HOA page." I opened the browser and searched. The HOA had a public presence, community updates, announcements, and there, posted 4 hours ago, was a message. "Attention, Pinecrest residents, due to severe violations of community standards, residency access has been suspended for a new homeowner. The HOA takes community safety seriously. Thank you for your cooperation." 200 comments, most of them were brutal. "Good, we don't need people like that here. HOA is doing the right thing. If they violated the rules, they deserve it." Not a single person questioned it, not one. I felt my hands shaking. Margot had turned the entire community against me without giving a single detail. No evidence, no specifics, just vague accusations. I wanted to respond, to defend myself, but Brennan's voice echoed in my head. "Document everything. Get a good lawyer." I closed the laptop. I lay down on the other side of the bed, staring at the ceiling. The faucet dripped in the bathroom. A car alarm went off somewhere in the parking lot. Jasper stirred in his sleep, murmuring something I couldn't make out. I reached over and touched his hair gently. "I'm going to fix this," I whispered. "I promise." But in that dark, cramped motel room, with my son sleeping beside me and my house locked behind a steel barricade, I felt more powerless than I'd ever felt in my life. Tomorrow I'd start fighting back. Tonight all I could do was lie there and let the anger burn. I left Jasper asleep at the motel the next night. It was 2 in the morning. The streets were empty. I drove back to Pinecrest Meadows with my camera bag in the passenger seat and a flashlight in my jacket pocket. The gate was open. No guards, no SUVs. Just silence. I parked 3 blocks away and walked through the shadows, keeping close to the hedges. The neighborhood looked different at night. The streetlights cast long shadows across the manicured lawns. Every house is dark except for a few porch lights. I reached 47 Maple Drive and stood there for a moment looking at it. My house. The windows were dark, the front door was locked, but I had keys. I moved around to the back, stepping carefully over the low fence. The back door opened with a soft click. I stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Fresh paint, new carpet, everything I'd planned for. I closed the door behind me and stood in the darkness, letting my eyes adjust. Then I saw them. Cameras. Small black, mounted in the corners of the living room. I moved closer, shining my flashlight. They weren't mine. I hadn't installed any security system yet. Someone else had put these here. I pulled out my camera and started photographing everything. The angles, the placements, the wiring. Then I moved to study. My filing cabinet was still there, the one I'd moved in during the initial walkthrough. I opened it. The documents inside looked wrong. I pulled out the purchase contract. There was an extra page stapled to the back, a clause I'd never seen before. Homeowners agree to abide by all special HOA provisions as outlined in Addendum C, including, but not limited to, emergency suspension protocols. I flipped through the rest of the document. Addendum C didn't exist in my original copy. This was a forgery. Someone had added it after the fact. I photographed every page, making sure to capture the signatures at the bottom. They didn't match mine, not even close. The lights outside flicked on. Bright. Suddenly, I froze. Through the window I saw headlights, 2 SUVs pulling into the driveway, doors opening, voices. I moved quickly, stuffing the documents back into the cabinet and heading for the back door. But I was too late. The front door rattled, a key turned in the lock. They had keys to my house. The door swung open. Rowan stepped inside first, followed by 2 men in security uniforms. "I told you," Rowan said. "Motion sensors picked up activity." One of the guards swept a flashlight across the room. The beam landed on me. "There," he said. Rowan's expression hardened. "Mr. Callahan, you're trespassing." I kept my voice steady. "This is my house. I'm inspecting my property." Rowan pulled out his phone. "You were told to stay away. Now you're breaking and entering. I'm calling the police." I held up my camera. "Go ahead. While you're at it, explain why you installed surveillance equipment in my house without my permission." Rowan hesitated, just for a second, but I saw it. "That equipment was installed for security purposes," he said. "Standard HOA protocol for vacant properties." I stepped closer. "This property isn't vacant. It's mine. And those cameras are illegal." One of the guards moved forward, hand on his belt. "Sir, you need to leave, now." I looked at Rowan, at the guards. The cameras are still recording in the corners. "I'm leaving," I said, "but I have everything I need." Yet I walked past them out at the front door and into the night. Rowan called after me. "If you come back here again, you'll be arrested." I didn't respond. I just kept walking. By the time I got back to the motel, it was almost 4 a.m. Jasper was still asleep. I sat at the desk and downloaded the photos from my camera onto my laptop. The forged documents, the illegal cameras, the altered contract. I had proof now. Proof that Margot wasn't just abusing her authority. She was committing fraud. The next morning, I drove to the public library. The records room was in the basement rows of filing cabinets and microfiche machines that looked like they hadn't been updated since the 80s. A librarian directed me to the HOA registration files. I pulled the folder for Pinecrest Meadows. The HOA had been registered in 2019. Margot was listed as president, but as I read through the meeting minutes, something became clear. Half the meetings didn't have enough members present to be valid. The financials weren't publicly posted, and Margot hadn't been elected. She'd appointed herself after the previous president resigned. There was no vote, no board approval, just a unilateral decision. I made copies of everything. Then I started looking through complaints. There were 3 families who'd been forced out over the past 2 years. Same pattern every time. Sudden violations, emergency resolutions, properties seized and resold. I found an address for one of the former residents, an older woman who'd lived 2 streets over from me. I drove to her current place that afternoon, a small apartment complex on the edge of town. I knocked on the door. She answered slowly, peering through the gap in the chain lock. She was in her 70s, gray hair, cautious eyes. "Yes," she said. "Mrs. Aldridge?" I asked. "My name is Emmett Callahan. I just bought a house in Pinecrest Meadows. I think the same thing that happened to you is happening to me." Her expression changed. Fear, anger, something in between. She opened the door wider. "Come in," she said. We sat at her kitchen table. She made tea. Her hands shook slightly as she poured. "Margot Sinclair," she said quietly. "She's a monster. She forced me out of my home 2 years ago, said I violated landscaping codes. I'd lived there for 15 years, never had a problem. Then one day I got a notice. Emergency resolution. I had 72 hours to vacate. "Did you fight it?" I asked. She shook her head. "I tried, but I couldn't afford a lawyer. And the HOA threatened to put a lien on the property if I didn't leave. So I sold it, for half what it was worth." She looked at me. 3 months later, a development company bought the house. Pinnacle Properties. They flipped it and sold it for triple the price. I felt my chest tighten. "Pinnacle Properties?" She nodded. "Margot's working with them. I don't know how, but she is. She clears out houses, they buy them cheap, and everyone makes money. Except the people who lose their homes." I pulled out my notebook. "Do you have any proof documents, emails?" She stood and walked to a drawer. She pulled out a folder. "I kept everything. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what to do with it." She handed me the folder. Inside were eviction notices, meeting minutes, and a receipt. A payment from Pinnacle Properties to the HOA. $50,000, listed as a consulting fee. I stared at the receipt. "Can I make copies of these?" I asked. She nodded. "Take them. If you're going to fight her, you'll need everything you can get." I left her apartment with the folder under my arm. As I drove back toward the motel, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't helpless anymore. I had proof. I had a pattern. And I knew exactly what Margot was doing. Now I just needed to find someone who could help me stop her. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "If you want the truth about Margot, meet me at Central Park. Bench 7, 6 tonight, come alone." I stared at the message. It could be a trap. It could be nothing. But I didn't have a choice. I typed back, "I'll be there." Monday morning. I dropped Jasper at school and drove straight back to the house. I needed to document the damage, take photos, build a case. But when I turned onto Maple Drive, I saw them. 4 pickup trucks parked in my driveway, a crew of 8 men in work boots and hard hats, power tools, ladders, a dumpster, and standing in the middle of it all, clipboard in hand, was Margot. I slammed on the brakes and jumped out of the car. "What the hell is going on?" I shouted. Margot turned slowly, that same cold smile on her face. "Good morning, Mr. Callahan. We're conducting emergency repairs. The property was flagged for multiple code violations, structural concerns, electrical hazards. We're required by law to address them immediately." I looked past her at the crew. One man was prying off the front door with a crowbar. Another was smashing out the living room window with a hammer. Glass shattered onto the porch. "Stop!" I ran toward them. "You can't do this." Rowan stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "Mr. Callahan, the HOA has the authority to perform necessary repairs on properties that pose a safety risk. This was approved by emergency resolution." I shoved past him and grabbed the arm of the man with the crowbar. "Get off my property, now!" The man looked at Rowan uncertain. Rowan nodded. The man stepped back, but the damage was already done. The front door hung crooked on its hinges. The window was a gaping hole. Inside, I could see another worker cutting into the electrical panel with wire cutters. Sparks flew. The lights inside the house flickered and died. "You're insane," I said, turning to Margot. "There's nothing wrong with this house. I had it inspected 3 weeks ago. It passed everything." Margot held up a sheet of paper. "This is the HOA inspection report, conducted last Thursday. It lists 14 violations. Faulty wiring, compromised foundation, mold in the attic, all of it documented." I snatched the paper from her hand. It was dated 4 days ago, but I'd been blocked from the property for over a week. No one had been inside except Rowan and his crew. "This is fake," I said. "You fabricated this." Margot's smile didn't waver. "That's a serious accusation, Mr. Callahan. Do you have proof?" I pulled out my phone and started recording. "I'm documenting all of this, every second, every violation." Margot didn't flinch. "Go ahead. You're welcome to record, but it won't change the fact that this property is a safety hazard. We're obligated to fix it." One of the workers climbed onto the roof with a sledgehammer. He started smashing tiles. Pieces of clay rained down onto the lawn. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. This was my house, my savings, my future, and they were tearing it apart in front of me. I dialed 911. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. 911, what's your emergency?" the dispatcher asked. "I need police at 47 Maple Drive in Pinecrest Meadows. People are destroying my property without my permission." The dispatcher's voice was calm. "Are you in danger, sir?" I looked at Margot, at Rowan. The crew methodically dismantled my home. "They're breaking into my house. They're smashing windows, cutting electrical lines. I need someone here now." 20 minutes later, the same patrol car pulled up. Officer Brennan stepped out, followed by Officer Quinn. He walked over to me, his expression tired. "Mr. Callahan," he said, "we talked about this. This is a civil matter." I pointed at the house. "They're destroying my property. That's vandalism. That's criminal." Brennan looked at Margot. She stepped forward immediately, holding out the clipboard. "Officer, the HOA has legal authority to perform emergency repairs. Here's the resolution. Here's the inspection report. Everything is documented and approved." Brennan took the papers. He read through them slowly. I could see his jaw tighten. Finally, he looked up. "Ma'am, even if this is legal under HOA bylaws, this is still a disputed property. I'd recommend you pause the work until a court can review it." Margot shook her head. "Officer, with all due respect, we can't pause. These are safety violations. If someone gets hurt because we delayed repairs, the HOA could be liable. We're acting in good faith to protect the community." Brennan turned to me. "Mr. Callahan, I'm sorry, but if they have documentation that says this is an emergency repair, I can't stop them. You need to get a lawyer and file an injunction. That's the only way to stop this legally." I felt the ground tilt beneath me. "So, you're just going to let them destroy my house?" Brennan's voice dropped. "I don't have a choice. This isn't criminal. It's civil. I can't intervene." He walked back to his car. Quinn followed. The patrol car pulled away. The crew went back to work, the sound of hammers, saws, breaking glass. I stood there helpless, watching everything I'd worked for being torn apart. At 3 o'clock, I picked Jasper up from school. He saw the house from the car window. His face went pale. "Dad," he whispered, "what happened?" I couldn't answer. I just pulled over and sat there gripping the steering wheel. Jasper started crying. "They broke our house. Why did they break our house?" I turned to him, forcing myself to stay calm. "They made a mistake, buddy, but I'm going to fix it. I promise." Neighbors stood on their lawns watching. Some of them whispered to each other. A few took photos. No one came over. No one asked if I was okay. They just watched, like I was some kind of spectacle. That night, Jasper was already asleep when I sat at the desk, the glow of the laptop screen lighting the small room. My hands trembled as I typed one word into the search bar: help. Page after page of results. I clicked on one: Bennett Ashford Law Firm, specializing in civil rights and homeowners association abuse. 5-star reviews. Testimonials from people who had fought back and won. I read through the cases. A family in Ohio who had been wrongfully evicted. A man in Texas who'd sued his HOA for fraud. All of them had won. All of them had used this firm. I opened my email and started typing. "Mr. Ashford, my name is Emmett Callahan. I'm a homeowner in Pinecrest Meadows. The HOA has illegally locked me out of my property, fabricated violations, and destroyed my home. I have documentation, photos, forged contracts. I need help. I'm ready to fight. Please contact me as soon as possible." I attached every photo I'd taken, every document I'd copied, every piece of evidence I had. Then I hit send. It was 11:30 at night. I didn't expect a response until morning, but 5 minutes later my phone buzzed. An email. "Mr. Callahan, I've reviewed your attachments. This is one of the most egregious cases of HOA abuse I've seen. I can help. Let's meet tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. My office. We're going to take them down." I stared at the screen. For the first time in days, I felt something other than rage. I felt hope. I looked over at Jasper asleep on the bed. His drawing of our house was still tucked in his backpack, the one with the red door and the 2 stick figures on the porch. I picked it up and held it in my hands. "We're getting it back," I whispered. "I don't care what it takes. We're getting it back." The law office was downtown, tucked between a coffee shop and a bookstore. Clean glass windows, a brass nameplate by the door, Bennett Ashford and Associates. I walked in at 8:55, Jasper holding my hand. The receptionist smiled warmly and led us to a conference room, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the street, a long table with leather chairs. And sitting at the head of the table was a man in his early 40s, sharp suit, calm eyes. He stood when we entered. "Mr. Callahan," he said, extending his hand. "Bennett Ashford." I shook it. His grip was firm. Confidence. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice," I said. He gestured to the chairs. "Please sit. I've been reviewing your case all night. What Margot Sinclair is doing isn't just unethical, it's criminal." Jasper sat quietly beside me, his backpack on his lap. Bennett glanced at him, then back at me. "Is there somewhere he can wait while we talk? This might get detailed." The receptionist appeared at the door. "I have coloring books and snacks in the waiting area," she said gently. Jasper looked at me. I nodded. "It's okay, buddy. I'll be right here." He followed her out. The door closed. Bennett opened a folder and spread documents across the table. My photos, the forged contracts, the fake inspection reports. "Let's start with what we know," he said. "The HOA doesn't have the authority to suspend your residency without cause. They skipped every procedural step. No public notice, no hearing, no quorum for an emergency meeting. That alone is grounds for an injunction." I leaned forward. "Can we stop them? Can we get my house back?" Bennett nodded. "We can, but it's going to take time. I'll file a motion for a preliminary injunction this afternoon. That'll freeze all HOA actions against your property. We'll also request a temporary restraining order to prevent further damage." He paused. "But here's the problem. We need internal evidence, emails, financial records, meeting minutes, anything that proves this is part of a larger scheme." I pulled out the folder from the former resident. "I have this. A receipt showing Pinnacle Properties paid the HOA $50,000, listed as a consulting fee." Bennett's eyes sharpened. "That's a start, but we need more. We need proof that Margot personally benefited. Bank statements, wire transfers, correspondence with the developer. I felt my shoulders sag. How am I supposed to get that I don't have access to HOA records? Bennett leaned back in his chair. Sometimes, he said carefully, the people on the inside get tired of being complicit. If there's anyone in that HOA who has a conscience, they might be willing to talk. I thought about Rowan, about the security guards. None of them seemed like they'd break rank. But then I remembered the text, the anonymous message. Meet me at Central Park, bench 7, 6 tonight. I pulled out my phone and showed Bennett. He read it, then looked up at me. You need to go to that meeting. Whoever sent this might have what we need. That evening I left Jasper with a babysitter at the motel and drove to Central Park. The sun was setting. Families were packing up picnics. Joggers passed by on the trails. I found bench 7 near the duck pond. I sat down and waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I was starting to think it was a setup when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. A young man stood there, late 20s, thin, nervous eyes. He looked around quickly, then sat down on the other end of the bench. Mr. Callahan, he asked quietly. Yes, I said. Who are you? He didn't answer right away. He stared at the water. My name is Nolan. I'm the assistant secretary for the Pinecrest Meadows HOA. I've worked under Margot for 3 years. I felt my pulse quicken. Why are you here? Nolan's hands were shaking. Because what she's doing is wrong, and I can't be part of it anymore. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small USB drive. Everything is on here, he said. Emails between Margot and the developer, financial transfers, fake meeting minutes, forged signatures. I backed up everything off the internal server months ago. She thinks she deleted it, but I kept copies, been documenting it for 2 years. I didn't know what to do with it, but when I saw what she did to you, I couldn't stay silent. I stared at the drive. Why now? Why me? Nolan looked at me, his eyes red. Because my sister just bought a house in a different neighborhood, and if I let Margot keep doing this, someone's going to do the same thing to her. I can't let that happen. I took the drive carefully like it might shatter. What's on here specifically? Nolan swallowed hard. Margot's been working with Pinnacle Properties for 4 years. The plan is simple. Target homeowners who can't fight back. Force them out using fake violations. The HOA buys the property at a discount, then flips it to Pinnacle. Margot gets a cut. $200,000 over the past 18 months, all wired to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. I felt my chest tighten. How many families? Nolan's voice cracked. You're the 4th, 3 before you. All of them lost their homes. All of them thought they were alone. I looked down at the USB drive in my hand. This is enough to bury her. Nolan nodded. It's everything. Bank records, email chains, even recordings of meetings where she admitted what she was doing. But you have to promise me something. I looked at him. What? He leaned closer. Don't use my name unless you have to. If Margot finds out I gave you this, she'll destroy me. She has connections, lawyers, people who owe her favors. I need to protect myself. I nodded. I'll do everything I can to keep you out of it. But if it goes to court, you might have to testify. Nolan closed his eyes. I know. And I will. If it comes to that. But until then, please, keep me anonymous. He stood up. Good luck, Mr. Callahan. You're going to need it. He walked away, quickly disappearing into the growing darkness. I sat there for a long time staring at the USB drive. Then I called Bennett. He answered on the first ring. Talk to me, he said. I have it, I said. Everything. Emails, bank records, the whole scheme. There was a pause. Then Bennett's voice came back sharper. Get to my office, now. I drove straight there. Bennett was waiting in the conference room, his laptop already open. I handed him the USB drive. He plugged it in. The screen is filled with folders, hundreds of files. Bennett clicked through them methodically. His expression never changed, but I could see his jaw tightening. After 20 minutes, he sat back. This is it, he said. This is everything we need. Financial fraud, forgery, conspiracy, money laundering. Margot Sinclair isn't just abusing her power. She's running a criminal enterprise. I felt something shift inside me. Relief, vindication, rage, all at once. What's next? I asked. Bennett closed the laptop. Tomorrow I will file the injunction. I'll include this evidence. The court will freeze all HOA activity and launch an investigation. Within 2 weeks, we'll have a preliminary hearing. And if the judge sees what I'm seeing, Margot won't just lose her position. She'll face criminal charges. I looked at him. How long? Bennett met my eyes. 2 weeks to the hearing, maybe a month to a full trial. But Mr. Callahan, based on this evidence, you're not just getting your house back. You're taking down an entire corrupt system. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I hadn't cried since this started. But sitting there in that quiet office with proof that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't alone, I felt the weight of it all crash down. "Thank you," I said quietly. Bennett stood and extended his hand again. "Don't thank me yet. We still have to win." Bennett filed the motion the next morning. Motion for preliminary injunction, temporary restraining order, emergency relief. I sat in his office while he walked me through every page. The language was dense technical, but the message was clear. Stop all HOA actions against Emmett Callahan's property. Restore his access immediately. Freeze all HOA financial accounts pending investigation. "The court will review this today," Bennett said. "If the judge agrees there's merit, we'll get a hearing date within 10 days. He was right. By 4 that afternoon, I got the call. The court had approved the temporary restraining order. All work on my property had to stop. Margot couldn't touch the house, couldn't block my access, couldn't do anything until a judge reviewed the case. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But Bennett's voice brought me back. "This is just the first step. Now we build the case." Over the next week, Bennett brought in experts. The first was a forensic accountant. His name was Donovan, mid-50s, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of guy who could find a missing penny in $1 million budget. He sat in the conference room with Bennett and me, his laptop open, spreadsheets filling the screen. "I've traced the money," Donovan said. 5 wire transfers over 18 months, all from an offshore account in the Cayman Islands to Margot Sinclair's personal banking account. Total amount $200,000. The timing matches perfectly with property transfers to Pinnacle Properties. He turned the laptop toward me. Rows of numbers, dates, account numbers. It was all there. "Can you testify to this?" Bennett asked. Donovan nodded. "Absolutely. This is textbook money laundering. There's no legitimate reason for these payments. It's a kickback scheme." Bennett made a note. "Good. You're a witness." The second expert was a woman in her early 60s, Dr. Adelaide Foster. She'd written 3 books on HOA law and consulted on over 100 cases. She sat across from me reading through the Pinecrest Meadows bylaws with a pen in hand. Every few minutes she'd circle something, underline, make notes in the margins. After an hour she looked up. "This HOA is operating completely outside legal boundaries," she said. "Emergency resolutions require a quorum, at least 5 board members present. Margot held every single meeting with only herself and 1 assistant. That's not a quorum, it's a dictatorship." She flipped to another page. "Public notice is mandatory for any residency suspension. Minimum 14 days. Margot gave 0 notice. She also bypassed the grievance process entirely. Homeowners have the right to appeal. She denied that right." Bennett leaned forward. "How many violations are we talking about?" Adelaide counted on her fingers. 14 major violations: fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, denial of due process, illegal suspension of property rights. Any one of these would be grounds for removal. All of them together. This HOA should be dissolved." Bennett smiled slightly. "Can you explain that to a judge?" Adelaide smiled back. "I've done it before. I'll do it again." The third expert arrived 2 days before the hearing. His name was Clifton, document examiner. He worked for the state crime lab for 20 years before going private. He looked at the forged contracts with a magnifying glass and a UV light. He compared signatures, measured pen pressure, analyzed ink composition. After 2 hours, he set the documents down. "These signatures are forgeries," he said. "The one attributed to Mr. Callahan doesn't match his verified signature in any way. The stroke pattern is different. Pressure points are inconsistent. Even the ink is wrong." He held up 2 documents side by side under the light. "This one was signed with a ballpoint pen. This one with gel ink. They're not even from the same time frame." Bennett looked at me. 99% certainty. Clifton didn't hesitate. 99.2%. These are fake. While the experts built their testimonies, Margot fought back. Her lawyer, a man named Clayton, filed a countersuit. Trespassing, defamation, harassment. The accusations were wild, baseless, but they were public. The local paper picked up the story. Homeowner sues HOA, faces counter allegations. The article painted me as a troublemaker, someone who refused to follow rules, someone who harassed community leaders. The comments section exploded. Half the people thought I was a hero, the other half thought I was entitled. I wanted to respond, to defend myself, to post the evidence online and let the world see what Margot was really doing. But Bennett stopped me. "Don't," he said firmly. "Don't post anything, don't comment, don't engage. The moment you go public, you lose control of the narrative. Let the court speak for you." I clenched my fists. "They're destroying my reputation." Bennett's voice softened. "I know, but this is what desperate people do. They lash out. They throw mud. It means we're winning." The night before the hearing, I sat in the motel room with Jasper. He was drawing again. This time it wasn't our house, it was a courtroom. Stick figures sitting at tables, a judge at the front. "What's that?" I asked. He didn't look up. "It's you and the lawyer. You're going to win tomorrow." I felt my throat tighten. "How do you know?" He finally looked at me. "Because you promised. And you always keep your promises." I pulled him into a hug. "You're right, buddy. I do." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept running through everything in my head, the evidence, the testimonies, the arguments. Bennett had prepared me for cross-examination, taught me how to stay calm, how to answer clearly, how to not let Clayton rattle me, but the fear was still there. What if the judge didn't believe us? What if Margot's lawyers found a loophole? What if this all fell apart? At 2 a.m, my phone buzzed. A text from Bennett. "Stop worrying. We have everything we need. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we will take her down." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I set the phone down and closed my eyes. Tomorrow was the day. Tomorrow I'd finally get to stand in front of a judge and tell the truth. Tomorrow Margot Sinclair would have to answer for what she'd done. And if there was any justice left in this world, she'd lose. I woke up at 6, showered, put on the one suit I owned. Jasper sat on the bed watching me tie my tie. "You look like a lawyer," he said. I smiled. "I'm not a lawyer, buddy, but I'm about to become really good at fighting like one." We drove to the courthouse together. Bennett was waiting outside 2 assistants with him arms full of files. He looked calm, confidence, like he'd done this 1,000 times. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded. "Let's end this." County Courthouse, Room 4. B. The air smelled like old wood and floor polish. Rows of benches filled with people, residents from Pinecrest, reporters with notebooks, a blogger I recognized from local news coverage. The bailiff called the room to order. Everyone stood. Judge Lillian Monroe entered from the side door. She was in her 50s, gray hair pulled back, sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She sat at the bench and looked down at the papers in front of her. "Be seated," she said. Her voice was calm but commanding. I sat next to Bennett at the plaintiff's table. Across the aisle, Margot sat with Clayton, her lawyer. She was dressed in a navy suit, hair perfect expression, blank. She didn't look at me once. Behind her sat Rowan, arms crossed, and 2 other HOA board members I'd never seen before. The judge adjusted her glasses. "This is a preliminary hearing for case number 7429. Callahan versus Pinecrest Meadows Homeowners Association. Mr. Ashford, you may proceed with your opening statement." Bennett stood. He didn't rush. He walked to the center of the room, hands clasped in front of him. "Your Honor, this case is not about a homeowners association enforcing legitimate rules. This is about systematic fraud, forgery, money laundering, and the illegal seizure of private property." He paused, letting the words settle. "The plaintiff, Emmett Callahan, purchased his home legally. He followed every rule, paid every fee, but the HOA president, Margot Sinclair, fabricated violations to force him out. Why? Because she's profiting from a scheme with a development company. We have proof, bank records, emails, forged documents, and testimony from an insider who will confirm everything." The room was silent. Judge Monroe made a note. "Thank you, Mr. Ashford. Mr. Merrick, your opening." Clayton stood. He was older, had silver hair, and an expensive suit. He smiled at the judge like they were old friends. "Your Honor, this is a simple case of a homeowner who refuses to follow community standards. The HOA acted within its legal authority to address serious violations. Mr. Callahan has ignored multiple notices. He's trespassed on HOA property, and now he's slandering good people with baseless accusations. He gestured toward Margot. Ms. Sinclair has served this community for 6 years. She's a volunteer. She doesn't profit from this position. These allegations are not only false, they're defamatory. Judge Monroe looked at both lawyers. Let's hear the evidence. Mr. Ashford, call your first witness. Bennett nodded. The plaintiff calls Donovan Wright, forensic accountant. Donovan walked to the witness stand, was sworn in, and sat down. Bennett approached with a folder. Mr. Wright, can you explain what you found in your analysis of the HOA's financial records? Donovan opened his laptop. I traced 5 wire transfers over 18 months, all from an offshore account in the Cayman Islands to Ms. Sinclair's personal bank account. Total amount $200,000. The transfers coincide exactly with property sales to Pinnacle Properties. He turned the screen toward the judge. A chart appeared on the courtroom monitor. Dates, amounts, account numbers. This pattern is consistent with illegal kickback schemes. Donovan continued. There's no legitimate business reason for these payments. Ms. Sinclair received money directly tied to property transactions she facilitated as HOA president. Clayton stood. Objection, speculation. Judge Monroe looked at Donovan. Can you prove these payments are connected to the property sales? Donovan nodded. The timing is exact. Within 72 hours of each property transfer, a payment was made. 5 times. Same pattern. Judge Monroe made another note. Objection overruled. Continue. Bennett called his second witness. The plaintiff calls Dr. Adelaide Foster, HOA law expert. Adelaide took the stand. Bennett handed her a copy of the Pinecrest bylaws. Dr. Foster, in your professional opinion, did the HOA follow proper procedures in suspending Mr. Callahan's residency? Adelaide didn't hesitate. No, they violated 14 separate legal requirements. Emergency resolutions require a quorum of 5 board members. Ms. Sinclair held meetings with only herself and 1 assistant. That's not legal. Public notice is mandatory, 14 days minimum. Mr. Callahan received 0 notice. Homeowners have the right to appeal. That right was denied. She flipped through the pages. This HOA operated outside all legal frameworks. It's not governance, it's autocracy. Clayton stood again. Objection. The witness is making legal conclusions. Judge Monroe looked at Adelaide. Dr. Foster, are you qualified to assess HOA legal compliance? Adelaide met her eyes. I've consulted on over 100 HOA cases. I've written 3 books on the subject. Yes, Your Honor, I'm qualified. Judge Monroe nodded. Objection overruled. Bennett called his third witness. The plaintiff calls Clifton Vale, document examiner. Clifton took the stand. Bennett handed him the forged contracts. Mr. Vale, can you confirm whether these signatures are authentic? Clifton held them up under a light. These signatures attributed to Mr. Callahan are forgeries. The stroke patterns don't match. The pen pressure is inconsistent. Even the ink type is different. I can say with 99.2% certainty that these are fake. He placed 2 documents side by side on the projection screen. The differences were visible even to someone without training. The judge leaned forward in studying the images. Clayton stood. Your Honor, this is circumstantial. Documents can be altered for many reasons. Clifton turned to him. Not like this. These weren't altered. They were created from scratch. Someone forged Mr. Callahan's signature to fabricate compliance with HOA rules he never agreed to. The courtroom murmured. Judge Monroe tapped her gavel lightly. Order. Bennett turned to the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to call one more witness, a member of the HOA staff who has direct knowledge of Ms. Sinclair's actions. Clayton shot to his feet. Objection. This witness wasn't disclosed. Bennett held up a document. I filed a notice 48 hours ago. It's in the record. Judge Monroe checked her files. He's right. Objection overruled. Call your witness. Bennett looked toward the back of the room. The plaintiff calls Nolan Ridgway. The doors opened. Nolan walked in slowly, his face pale. He looked terrified, but he walked to the stand, was sworn in, and sat down. Bennett approached carefully. Mr. Ridgway, how long have you worked for the Pinecrest Meadows HOA? Nolan's voice was quiet. 3 years. I'm the assistant secretary. Bennett nodded. And in that time, have you witnessed Ms. Sinclair engage in illegal activity? Nolan swallowed hard. He looked at Margot. She was staring at him, her expression cold, unreadable. Yes, he said finally. I have. The room went silent. Bennett continued. Can you describe what you witnessed? Nolan took a breath. Ms. Sinclair ordered me to forge meeting minutes, to backdate notices, to create fake violations for homeowners she wanted removed. She said if I didn't do it, I'd be fired and blacklisted. His voice cracked. I did it. I'm not proud of it, but I did it because I was afraid. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket. This is an email from Ms. Sinclair to the CEO of Pinnacle Properties. She writes, we need to clear 5 properties by the end of the year. Standard playbook. My fee will be wired as usual. Bennett took the paper and entered it as evidence. Mr. Ridgway, why are you coming forward now? Nolan looked at me, then at the judge. Because I have a sister. She just bought a house. And if I let this keep happening, someone's going to do the same thing to her. I can't let that happen. Not anymore. Clayton tried to discredit him. Mr. Ridgway, do you have any personal grudges against Ms. Sinclair? Nolan shook his head. No, I just want to do the right thing. Judge Monroe looked at Margot. Ms. Sinclair, do you wish to testify in your defense? Margot stood slowly. Clayton whispered something to her. She shook her head. Your Honor, she said quietly, I'd like to request time to review this evidence with my counsel. Judge Monroe's expression didn't change. I've heard enough. Based on the testimony and evidence presented, I'm granting the preliminary injunction. All HOA actions against Mr. Callahan's property are hereby stopped. His access is restored immediately. Furthermore, I'm freezing all HOA financial accounts pending a full criminal investigation. She looked directly at Margot. Miss Sinclair, you've betrayed the trust of your community. Your actions weren't just illegal, they were immoral. I'm referring this case to the district attorney for possible criminal charges. Margot's face went pale. She sat down slowly, staring at the table. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Monroe struck her gavel. Order. This hearing is adjourned. People stood. Reporters rushed for the doors. I sat there, barely breathing. Bennett put a hand on my shoulder. We won. I looked at him. Is it over? He smiled. It's just beginning. But yes, you won. 2 weeks after the hearing, the criminal charges came down. The district attorney filed against Margot Sinclair. Fraud, forgery, money laundering. She was facing 5 to 10 years. Her lawyer negotiated a plea deal. 3 years in prison, $500,000 in fines, 2,000 hours of community service. She took it. Rowan got 18 months probation and 500 hours of service. The CEO of Pinnacle Properties was under investigation. His company's reputation was destroyed. The HOA was dissolved by court order. A new board was elected. Transparent financials, independent audits, real accountability. Everything Margot had corrupted was being rebuilt from the ground up. And on a Saturday morning in late autumn, I finally drove back to Pinecrest Meadows with Jasper beside me. This time there were no barricades, no SUVs, just an open road and the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. The house had been repaired. The new HOA board paid for everything as part of the settlement. New door, new windows. The electrical system was restored. Fresh paint on the porch. It looked better than it had before. When I pulled into the driveway, neighbors were waiting, not with hostility, with flowers, welcome banners, apologies. An older woman I recognized from the original crowd stepped forward. It was the former resident I'd met weeks ago. She smiled gently. Welcome home, Emmett. For real this time. Others came forward. We're sorry we didn't speak up. We were afraid of Margot. Thank you for fighting back. I shook their hands, accepted their apologies. I didn't forgive everyone. Some had been cruel. Some had stayed silent when they should have spoken. But I understood fear. I understood what it felt like to be powerless. And I wasn't going to carry that anger forever. Jasper ran up the front steps, his backpack bouncing. Dad, can we go inside? I pulled out my keys, the same keys I'd held that first night, and this time I used them. The door opened smoothly. Sunlight poured through the windows. The smell of fresh paint, clean floors, home. Jasper ran to his room. I could hear him laughing. Dad, it's blue. They painted it blue. I walked through the house, slowly taking it all in. The living room where I'd found those illegal cameras. The study where I'd discovered the forged documents. The kitchen where I'd imagined making breakfast with my son on quiet Saturday mornings. It was all here, waiting. I opened the back door and stepped into the yard. The grass had been cut. The fence was repaired. In the corner, someone had planted a small oak tree. A note was tied to one of the branches. I walked over and read it. "For new beginnings, from your neighbors." I stood there for a long time, feeling the autumn breeze on my face, thinking about everything that had happened, the fear, the anger, the sleepless nights in that motel room, the moment I'd almost given up. But I hadn't, and that made all the difference. A knock at the door pulled me back. I opened it. Nolan stood there holding a small box. He looked better than he had in court, less pale, less afraid. "Hey," he said quietly. "I brought you something." He handed me the box. Inside was a set of documents, his resignation letter from the HOA, and a new business card. "I got a job," he said, "with a non-profit. Housing rights advocacy, helping people fight back against stuff like this." I smiled. "That's good, really good." He nodded. "I know I can't undo what I did, but I can try to make it right going forward." I extended my hand. "You already started. Thank you." We shook. He paused at the door. "Emmett, can I ask you something?" I nodded. "How did you keep going when everything feels hopeless?" I thought about it. I had someone depending on me, and I had proof that I was right. Those two things were enough. Nolan smiled faintly. "I hope I can be that strong someday." He left, and I went back inside. Bennett called that evening. "Just wanted to check in," he said. "How does it feel?" I looked around the living room. Jasper was sprawling on the floor, arranging his toy cars in neat rows. "It feels real," I said. "For the first time in months, it feels real." Bennett's voice warmed. "You earned it. Not everyone would have fought this hard." I leaned against the doorframe. "I didn't have a choice." Bennett laughed softly. "You always had a choice. You chose the hard road, the right road. That matters." We talked for a few more minutes. He told me the local news had picked up the story. Other HOAs in the state were being investigated now. People were speaking up, demanding transparency. My case had started something bigger than just me. "You changed things, Emmett," Bennett said. "Don't forget that." After we hung up, I sat down next to Jasper. He looked up at me. "Was that the lawyer?" I nodded. "Yeah, he says we helped other people too." Jasper's eyes widened. "Really?" I ruffled his hair. "Really? Sometimes standing up for yourself means standing up for everyone." That evening, Jasper and I sat on the front porch. The sun was setting, casting golden light over the neighborhood. The same light I'd seen that first day. But this time it felt different, peaceful. He was drawing again. This time it was our house, with a blue door, 2 stick figures on the porch, and a big sun in the corner. "What do you think, Dad?" he asked, holding it up. I looked at it, at him, at the house behind us. "I think it's perfect, buddy." He smiled and went back to coloring. I looked out at the street. Lights were coming on in the other houses, families sitting down to dinner, kids playing in yards. A real community, not one built on fear. Jasper looked up at me. "Dad, did we win?" I thought about the question, about everything we'd been through, the fear, the anger, the fight. "Yeah," I said. "We won, but it wasn't about beating someone. It was about getting back what was ours." He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but he'd seen me fight for what was right, and that mattered. I stood and unlocked the front door, hold it open. "Come on, buddy, let's go home." Jasper grabbed his drawing and his backpack and ran inside. I stood there for a moment longer, looking out at the neighborhood, at the place I'd fought so hard to keep. Then I stepped inside, closed the door behind me, and for the first time in months I felt peace. Not because the fight was over, but because I'd stood up, because I'd refused to be pushed around, because when the system failed, I found another way. And in the end, justice won, the way it always should. Outside, the wind moved through the oak branches, whispering like the echo of everything we'd survived. Inside, Jasper's laughter filled the rooms, bright, certain, alive. I set my keys on the table, the sound soft but final. Home wasn't just a place anymore. It was proof we'd earned our peace.
From all of us here at QA Stories, thank you for watching. Smash that like button, drop a comment, and join us again for more unbelievable stories.